Divine suddenly. Have you ever felt like God was silent? Like you really need an answer from Him, or you really need a miracle? The people at the time of the Christmas story felt like that. They had not had a prophet or writings from God for 400 years, but they believed. And suddenly, God showed up. Today, our third Advent candle is about love. God is love. As we talk about how God reached out to the shepherds and to the wise men, we can talk about love. If you want to pause and gather 4 candles or tea lights, you can light 3 of them and cozy up by our fire and celebrate Advent with us. Picture this. There are a bunch of shepherds sitting in a field. It's really dark out there. They're likely temple shepherds, probably believers, dreaming and praying for the Messiah to come. But hope is silent. Life is challenging. Actually, life is awful. And they're sitting there in the dark. When suddenly, a divine suddenly, God shows up. The angels light the sky. Don't forget, the shepherds probably didn't have anything brighter than a candle or wick lamp, likely. Definitely, they'd never seen stadium lights. And suddenly, the whole sky was lit up. They were terrified. And again, the angel says, "Don't be afraid," and tells them that the Christ child, the answer to their prayers, has been born. God often shows up in a divine suddenly after a period of silence. God breaks the silence, and then He reveals the plan that He's been planning all along and which He already has set in motion. That's the story of the shepherds. Now picture the wise men. These are people who are spiritually aware, and they don't know God, but God knows them, and He goes to meet them. He shows them a strange star, and they follow it, and it leads them right to the Christ child. It's so amazing. No cell phones, no GPS, right there. God breaks the long silence in their lives in a divine suddenly. Suddenly, He reveals His plans to the wise men. So here's the thing I've been thinking about. Even when God shows up, we still have to show up too. Both the shepherds and the wise men still had to get up and go see. The shepherds had experienced God's power. God showed up with stadium lights and told them their prayers were answered. But they still had to get up off the field and go see. They had to go and see what God's divine suddenly was in order to be part of the story. The wise men had experienced God's power. They had an amazing miracle, a star in the heavens that moved and led them, and it just doesn't happen. They knew it was miraculous. And later they had the miracle of the angel meeting with them and protecting them from Herod, and so many miracles. But they still had to get up and go see in order to find their spirituality in God and His Son, Jesus. We all need a divine suddenly. How many of us need our silence broken by the power of God? We need God to show up in a divine suddenly. Suddenly, God is seen. Suddenly, His plan is revealed. Suddenly, the natural gives way to the supernatural. And suddenly, darkness scrambles to escape God's light. God is a God of love. As we light the candle of love today, may we prepare our hearts to get up and go see as God reveals His love and His plans to us.